Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I am the food enthusiast here at January Living. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a very frustrated baker. Just to advise you that all these shows and interviews are up on January Living's archives on their Facebook page and januaryliving.com. So feel free to go back, dig into the shows, and take them for your walks, your runs, or your drives. I am always excited about my guests, but today especially my guest is Alan DeValerio. He is a former butler at the White House, and he is a writer, author of Entertainment in the Modern White House, and also a speaker. Hi, Alan. Welcome back. I hear you were just doing a lecture out of town, weren't you?
Yes, good afternoon, Dara. Yes, I'm happy to be here with you. I was up in Connecticut, did about 4 or 5 presentations, and of course, with COVID, unfortunately, audiences tend to be a little smaller than they used to be. But it's always fun to get up in front of a group of people and talk.
I know that you like to talk. I think your initial goal was to be a political humorist. How did you get the job at the White House?
Well, like you said, I was interested in political humor. At that time, I was living in Florida, southern Florida, and finally came to the realization that I wasn't going to be getting anywhere writing political humor and living in Florida. So I relocated to DC. The first thing I thought about was getting a part-time job. I had worked as a banquet waiter when I was going to college during the summers. And so I got a job as an on-call waiter at the Senate restaurant on Capitol Hill. What better place to be if you were interested in political humor? While I was living in Florida, I had read a book called Upstairs at the White House, written by a fellow by the name of J.B. West, who was the head usher. And it was a fascinating account of his dealings with the first families that he worked for. And so I started thinking about it and thinking, well, I wonder if I could get a job at the White House. So I saw my senator. I'm originally from Rhode Island. My senator from Rhode Island, and I asked him if he would help me, and he referred me to his office, and that person in turn called the usher's office, and they said, yes, we do hire on what they call a contract or a part-time basis. And so they sent me the forms, and I filled them all out, and I had to go through the entire FBI investigation, which is very, very thorough. So it took about 6 or 7 months before I finally started working there.
What was training like? I mean, you could be a skilled server, but what was the training like? And did you have to, just on another subject, did you have to fill in a non-disclosure form for them?
Okay, the training, as far as training was concerned, it wasn't particularly elaborate. Basically, it was necessary to have some kind of a background in food service, but they pretty much trained us the way the White House way, which wasn't necessarily the correct way or the way other people do things, but it was the way they've been doing things for many, many years. And again, everything that we served back in those days was served what they call butler style. So you had one tray of food, and every table, if for a state dinner, for example, has a host or a hostess, and so we have 2 butlers per table. If I was the lead butler, I would approach the host or hostess with the tray, place it to their left, hand them the serving pieces. They would take what they wanted. And then the second butler would come with the vegetable. And so everything back in those days was served that way. As far as non-disclosure, I cannot vouch for the full-timers, but for part-timers, no, we were not informed in any way as to whether we could talk or not. Basically, it was an unwritten rule. You knew that if you were to talk to the press or do anything like that while you were working there, that was pretty much your
The end of your career.
yeah, you're out. Once you're gone from the White House, then you can do pretty much as you please.
Right. So, how many presidents did you work for?
I started there right at the tail end of the Carter administration, and I worked through the Reagan years and very briefly into the first Bush administration.
Okay. What was the scariest moment working in the White House?
The scariest moment, I think, for me was we had I had the opportunity on a number of occasions to work upstairs in the family quarters, and we had a dinner one time for Helmut Kohl. He was the Chancellor of Germany, and his wife, and all the receptions are held in on the second floor in what they call the Yellow Oval Room, which is a beautifully appointed room off the Truman balcony. And so after dinner, the entertainment was in that room. It was Marvin Hamlisch. And when the entertainment was over, we were to come in and serve champagne. I was the first butler into the room I had 4 glasses, not the flutes, but the smaller fruit cup type glasses on a tray. And I was to serve President Reagan and Mrs. Reagan and Chancellor Kohl and his wife. Normally, when we served drinks, we served standing up. So you're holding a tray upright. It was very easy. But they were seated on the sofa. And so I had to bend down to serve them. And I wasn't used to doing that. And as I started to bend down, the glasses started to slide off the tray. And fortunately, I was able to upright it before any damage had been done. But I know I lost at least 5 years off my life in that split second. It was a scary moment. And when I see those fruit cups now, if they don't have fruit in them, I break out into a sweat.
I know which ones you're talking about. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned the state dinners. Can you tell me a little bit more about that process and who designed what was on the table? And, we're going into the holiday season now, and I just thought maybe there's a tip or two that you can impart to our guests, or maybe not. I don't know. So I'm throwing it in your lap.
Well, state dinners, I'll tell you what the table looked like. It was a round table that would seat 8 people. Of course, there was always a beautiful flower arrangement right in the middle of the table. White House has its own flower shop and its own full-time florists. We would there would be 3 courses set at the table. So the first thing that would go on the table would be what they call a base plate or a show plate, which has no particular function at the moment, but it helped to guide us as to where to set the goldware. So there would be three courses at the table. First course was usually fish. Second course was the main course. That was usually meat. And the third course was salad. And this is European style of eating. So we would set the salad course, salad, fork, and knife on the inside, and in the middle would be the main course, fork, and knife, and on the outside, the fish course, fork, and knife. And as a guest, you would eat from the outside in. There would be 4 glasses at each place setting, white wine, red wine, water, and a champagne goblet. There would be a simply folded white napkin on the base plate with the eagle embossed on it. And then, of course, there would be a menu and a name tag. Then also we would scatter books of matches on the table that say the president's house on them. And then there would be little tins of mixed nuts and little tins of Godiva chocolates. And one of my favorite jobs was to sit in the back room with boxes and boxes of Godiva chocolates. And I put them in the tins and then put some in my pockets and never went without Godiva chocolates.
No, we were talking earlier about chocolate. Let's talk about, because this came up last night at dinner, a chef friend of mine said, I wonder what the junk food cravings were at the White House. And you were talking about Bill Clinton before we sort of went live. So
yeah. Roland Mesnier was the pastry chef back in those days. Now I wasn't there when Clinton was in office, but he was telling me that Clinton liked chocolate, but he was allergic to it apparently, and so he would sneak it every now and then, and particularly if Hillary wasn't there at the time, he would sneak some chocolate. And Roland said he always knew when he had some chocolate on the sly because he would break out, I guess. Of course, Ronald Reagan, as everybody knows, was a big jelly bean fan. Now we didn't seldom I can remember a time when we had jelly beans at like at a state dinner or any kind of
Right.
a function like that. But I think when he had cabinet meetings, you could see when you saw pictures of him in cabinet meetings, there's always a big jar of jelly beans on the table.
Great. Since I mentioned holidays just a second ago, were there any memorable moments about holidays while you were at the White House?
Well, one Christmas party actually stands out in my mind. It was on December 22nd, which you might say, well, what's the big deal of a Christmas party on December 22nd? Well, it was held outdoors. Apparently, the Carters were big figure skating fans. And so they actually erected a skating rink on the south lawn of the White House. And they invited former gold medalist Peggy Fleming to come and perform. It was two parts, afternoon and evening. And they gave us these large army pea coats to wear over our tuxedo pants. And it turned out to be a beautiful day, beautiful sunny day, fortunately, because, weather-wise, DC can be anything in December. So they really lucked out with the weather on that day. And in the afternoon, my job was working the grill. So the heat from the grill, the heat from the sun, the jacket, I was pretty comfortable. But at night, it was a different story. The sun went down, temperatures dropped, and believe me, it got really, really cold. It was so cold that I saw a congressman with his hands in his own pockets. And now at night, I was not on the grill. My job was to serve hot chocolate. And they gave us these mittens to wear, but I couldn't wear them because they were too cumbersome. And so I had to figure out a way to keep my hands warm. So I would pour hot chocolate on my hands when nobody was looking.
Really?
When the performance was over, I look up and here comes President and Mrs. Carter heading right for my station. And I had just started working there. And I'm thinking, oh, this is my big chance to serve the president and the first lady at the same time. And so they came up and Mrs. Carter asked for some hot chocolate. And I got out the mug and I pulled down the handle of the spigot and it was completely empty. I can't imagine. Who knows where that hot chocolate could have gone.
You were actually pouring it over your hands? Must
Yeah,
be damn cold.
that's how cold it was.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I had asked it. I know that, and a friend of mine had asked prior to the show about the movie The Butler and working with the maitre d' who was in that movie. Can you fill us in a little bit more?
Sure. The movie was based on, I'll say very loosely based on the life of Eugene Allen. He was the head butler when I started there and eventually became maitre d'. He was one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. He was just a great, great guy. Gene had one son, Charles, who did serve in Vietnam, but he was not killed there. He survived and still is alive today. So the civil rights activist son in the movie was totally fictitious. That person never existed. So you have a constant butting of heads between the father and the son, and that just never happened. It was disappointing to me because, like I said earlier, Gene was a great guy, and in the movie, he's kind of depicted as being, somewhat aggressive and antagonistic, and he was nothing like that at all. And his actual son, his son Charles, did say that the directors really threw his mother under the bus because she was played by Oprah Winfrey. She was depicted as being someone who drank and smoked and had affairs, and she was absolutely nothing like that whatsoever. So the movie was somewhat of a disappointment to me, but I think it was, in terms of how it depicted the civil rights era of that period, I think it did a really good job of that. But it kind of used Gene Allen as sort of a vehicle for that, for that purpose.
What were the salaries like at that time? I mean, Gene started off, as a pantry man, pantry boy?
I don't remember exactly how we. No, I think he started off as a butler. Um, the maitre d' who was there when I started was John Ficklin. He started as a pantry boy,
Oh,
and
okay.
he started in 1939 when Roosevelt was president. But yeah, I think the salaries back in those days were quite, because I know that Gene had was driving a taxi at one time because he couldn't make ends meet. But people, so I think salaries got better and better as time went on. People will often ask me when I do my presentations, what how we got paid. When I was first asked that question, I would just answer people outright. But now I kind of like to put it in a little perspective because there's a big thing going on in this country about minimum wage, and so we made $10 an hour for the first 4 hours, $15 an hour for the next four, and anything above 8 hours, you got $18 an hour. Now, remember, this is like 40 years ago. So, the question is, were we overpaid or are people today underpaid? Kind of reminds me of a line that George Burns used to say. He said, "I'm 95 years old and I still do a lot of things I did when I was 18." He said, "I don't know if it shows you how great I am at 95 or how pathetic I was when I was 18."
17. That's cute. I have a question in here. Let me turn to the side.
Okay.
Um, did you get to attend any of the White House concerts? Who was the best entertainer you heard? Did you get to meet them, or protocol mandate you keep distance?
We were when we were setting up for state dinners. There were occasions for us to go down to the East Room and listen to the entertainers rehearse. So I got to hear some people back doing that. I do recall one time Pearl Bailey was the entertainment that evening, and we went into the East Room to listen, and she got upset and threw everybody out. She didn't want anybody in listening to her rehearse. Um, I mentioned earlier about Marvin Hamlisch. We got to hear him perform that evening. I heard Benny Goodman play the clarinet one time. We heard Eubie Blake play the piano one time in the East Room. So yeah, we did on occasion get to hear the entertainment. Yitzhak Perlman did a concert one time that we were able to hear. I had Frank Sinatra at my table one evening, and prior to dinner, he was regaling the ladies at the table about how he had punched out a reporter and put him in the hospital. And then he called the hospital to find out how the poor fellow was getting along, not because he was interested in his well-being, but because he wanted to punch him out and put him back in the hospital again. But he did make a request that evening that the butlers be allowed to come down to the East Room to listen to the entertainment. So there I was sitting in the East Room of the White House listening to Frank Sinatra and Perry Como. So yes, we did get to hear the
I had a
entertainment.
note. I had a note here saying your best celebrity moment, but I'm assuming that's what we just heard about.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
What are some of the typical questions asked when you're giving your lectures?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, salary. What you had asked me about the non-disclosure agreements. Let me think. I can't think of any. They're all pretty much the same. Sometimes people. It's interesting because I talk about Ronald Reagan a lot because he was the one I worked for the most, and I always talk about how likable he was. And then people will still ask me, "So, who was your favorite president?" So I get that a lot, even though they don't seem to understand. I've already answered that question
The
earlier.
question.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, I've asked that. I'm ticking off. Okay. Well, let's sort of get off the subject a little bit and saying, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I think it would be patient. I think over the years, as I was growing up, I always wanted to jump into things before I was ready. So I think that the first thing that comes to mind to me is I would tell myself to, be more patient and, be more prepared when things come along, opportunities come along, be prepared, just like the Boy Scouts.
Or be informed.
That too.
Would you think that's applicable to the work that you did in the White House, or that didn't apply there?
Not necessarily. Just, overall, generally speaking.
I know that your career you went away from the White House and you worked for Marriott Corporation, and you've been involved in the service industry for a number of years. Have you seen any changes, or how do you feel the entertainment at home or people entertaining? Have you seen how it has evolved? Is there anything specific now that you go, well, I don't know why they're doing that, or that's a great idea?
I can't really think of anything specific. I think entertainment I don't know that it's really changed a whole lot over the years. I think that I think people, I can't vouch for what went on, prior to my coming to DC. I think people are getting away from the more formal types of functions and going, going more in the direction of less formality. Of course, I've been out of the business now for quite, like 20 years. So, I can't vouch for what is going on today. But I think that I saw a gradual change into a less formal service.
Before I forget, let's tell everybody your website.
Okay, it is.
Go ahead.
You want to go ahead? You want me to do it?
I want you to do it.
All right. It's whitehousememories.com.
And they can access your book there. They can hire you as a lecturer.
Correct.
Right. So that's all there. And it'll float up in the notes here on Facebook as the show goes on. There's another question. Let's see. Did you experience hissy fits from the first family? I
didn't catch that. Say that again.
Did you experience any hissy fits?
Oh,
from the first family? Hissy fits. That's a very technical term.
The only thing I can think of offhand was, and I can't remember what the situation was, but I think we were standing in the family dining room upstairs, and Nancy Reagan was having a problem with something. And the head usher at that time was a fellow by the name of Rex Scouten, and he was out of town, I guess, at that point. And it seemed to me like it was a very, not a big issue type of situation. And Jean Allen, the maitre d' at the time, was right there, and she could have easily had, talked to him and said, what do you think? But she seemed to be really upset over whatever the issue was. I know, this is not from personal experience, but there was an incident where something had been some little tchotchke that she had on the table up on the family quarters had been accidentally broken, and she thought it was the fault of the head housekeeper. Her name was Christine Limerick, and so she went bananas, from what I understand, over this, and she was really dressing her down, and so they had to. Rex Scouten, I mentioned earlier, the head usher, was a favorite of Nancy Reagan's, and so he came up and had to kind of calm her down, and but she just wouldn't let it go, and so it got to the point where Christine quit over it. Fortunately, after the Reagans left, they brought her back. So, then, she could be temperamental. But on the other hand, she did a couple of things to me that really warmed my heart. Is that when John Ficklin, the maitre d', who was there when I started. When he retired, she invited him and his wife to a state dinner, and she did the same thing for Gene Allen when he retired, he and his wife. And so I thought that was really a wonderful thing, because it was the first time any of the domestic help from the White House had ever been invited to any kind of a function like that. So
It's wonderful. Wonderful. If people are entertaining, is there something that should be on their don't list?
something on their
Don't. There's a to-do
when people
list.
are when
Yeah,
people are entertaining is something on their don't list.
what they
Uh,
shouldn't do.
um, hmm. That's probably a number of different things. I would. I was just talking about this a few days ago with my son. One of the things that I always found a bit disconcerting was when people, people had, they were good-hearted about trying to make the staff feel comfortable. But if you're doing a function in somebody's home, and they tried to make you like a part of the family or a part of the guest list, it was very uncomfortable. So there were times when people, the hosts, and again, out of the goodness of their heart, they wanted you to feel comfortable, but it made you feel uncomfortable because you were there to do a job. You're not there to enjoy yourself. And so you felt sometimes that the guests didn't know who you were. You
Right.
might pick up a plate or pick up a glass, a dirty glass, and they were wondering why you were doing that when they could have done that themselves. And on because sometimes most of the time we would wear an outfit. We would have a black tie, white shirt, maybe a jacket, so they knew who you were. But sometimes the host would say, we don't need to wear the tie, you're fine. And so then the guests didn't know who the heck you were, so it was uncomfortable. And it's understood, but I would say try to, one thing I would say is, try to differentiate from the staff from the guests.
Okay, great, great. All right, my final question for you. I know
All
you
right.
thought this list would never end, but here we go. Okay. Um, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
Holy cow. What did you ask me that you should have? Hmm. Well, you didn't ask me what the upstairs looked like at the White House. Now, everybody takes the White House tour usually, during your lifetime. You
Right.
get to see the state floor and the first floor, but you don't get to see the second floor. And that is, it's something that you have to see to understand. I mean, it's like living in a museum. I mean, so immaculately and beautifully appointed, everything in its place. And of course, you think about the history of the house. Every president except George Washington has lived there. So you've got the president's room, the Lincoln room, the Queen's room. And, for me, it was not only a, a thrill to be up there. But again, when you think about the history of the house and all the, every president except for George Washington has walked those hallways and stood in those same places that you're standing. Yeah, that is one of the things that really made the experience very special. And the
I
people
took
that I worked with, the guys that I worked with who have been there for 40, 35, 40 years, who I've seen it all, made some very wonderful friendships.
I said that was my last question, but I've come up with one. Are there any ghosts in the White House?
The only story I can tell you, one of the maids was telling me one time while she was the president and first lady were out of town. She was the last one to leave one night, and she turned off all the lights. And then she got outside and she looked up and there was a light on, I guess in the president's bedroom. So she went all the way back in, turned the light off, went back downstairs, went outside, looked up, and the light was back on again. So she said at that point she wasn't going back in a third time. And So, make of that what you will. It could have been just an electrical short, but who knows?
Alan, I want to thank you so much. Everybody, everything you need to know to reach Alan is in our notes. And Alan DeValerio, hopefully I'm pronouncing it
You
correctly.
are. You
And
are.
yay, I get my gold star. I want to thank you so much. And everyone, just go to his site, check out the book. And if you have a group together, hire him to come in and speak to your group. Wish you the best of the holiday season, Alan, and then I'm just going to follow up with a couple of notes here for the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Dara. It's been a real pleasure.
All right. Take care now. Next week, Delaney Noble will be on the show. Delaney has a business called Gala Cloth. And she puts down, she says, my noble pursuit is sharing tips for easy, healthy recipes and lifestyle. Serving it up savory, smart, and stylish. Gala Cloth. Also, if you're looking for something interesting to do this weekend, go to Soda Sofa Restaurant, SodaSofaInc.com. They are doing an opera night, a multi-course dinner with live opera. And if you've never been in Soda Sofa in North Charles Street, it's a beautiful place, murals. You feel like you'd be anywhere in the world. It's so, lost of words. That happens with age. So SodaSofaInc.com if you're interested in Sunday night's opera night. Reach out to them. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at food@januaryliving.com. My social is at Dara Cooks. And this will be up on January Living's Facebook page and januaryliving.com. We love it when you share the program with friends and family. And as always, may your plates always, always, always remain full. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week.